Okay, awesome. Okay, so I am Alia Ewing. I am a recent 2020 high school graduate with Mr. Lappin down there at the bottom. He was my old science teacher. Hi, shout out to Mr. Lappin. Anyways, so I am hosting this candidate forum because I have noticed that in Simi Valley, especially with like local politics, people tend to get bogged down in the 2020 presidential election, and they tend to forget about not only the mayor, but they also forget about the smaller races such as park board, water board, or school board. So because that, I wanted to give all of the candidates an opportunity at once to be able to share their platform and answer common questions submitted by the community. So starting with that, I would like to say that I did receive over 150 questions from the 140 people that RSVP'd. So that's super exciting. Unfortunately, that means I won't be able to get to all of these amazing questions only because we have such a short, such a limited amount of time, only 2 hours. We're gonna try and get through as many as possible. So in order for us to get through as many as possible, I have reduced the amount of time each candidate gets to speak. So each candidate will get to speak no longer than 1 minute. And most frequently it will be 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or sometimes 45 seconds, but mostly on the 15 to 30 second side. 15 seconds is about enough time for 1 to 2 sentences. 30 seconds is enough for like 2 to 3 sentences. And then 1 minute is like, if you're in English terms, it's about 1 paragraph worth of information. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys all know that please do not get upset if you see the candidate that you're rooting for get cut off after 15 seconds. We are doing this just to make sure that we can get through as many questions as possible, because like I said, we did receive 150 of them. I also, because I received 150 questions, I needed to reduce the amount of topics to only a few. So I chose the questions that seem to be the most frequent and then well written. So I might have gotten a lot of questions about climate change. So I'm not going to ask a question that's like, what do you plan to do about climate change? I'm going to ask a question that's specific and focuses on one aspect of climate change. I'll also be asking any question that was submitted for water board, park board, or school board. I will be asking almost every single question that was submitted for those candidates, simply because those are a lot smaller. So because that, they received a lot less, and therefore it was easier to admit all of those questions. The categories that I have sorted the questions into have been the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate change and human interactions with the environment, racial tension and general divisiveness in Simi Valley, and then lastly, Simi's economy, transparency, and engagement with the community. So anyways, moving on, I will stop talking and allow all the candidates to introduce themselves and give a quick description of their platform and anything like that. Each candidate will only have 15 seconds, and our first question, which will be the same question that they use to answer for themselves, is submitted by, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Nazlin Kanji's question of why you. So all of the candidates from now on will have the time to answer why you. First, we're going to be starting with Joe Ayala, and he is running for mayor.
I'm a union leader who's been fighting for the rights of people for over 20 years. I've been on the front lines of environmental, social, and labor justice. As your mayor, I would fight and continue to fight for the people of Simi Valley and try and bring unity to the city. My platform is a strength, unity, and strength and wisdom. So thank you very much for your time. That was quick.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next candidate is going to be Robert Clarizio.
Hey, God bless everybody. I'm Robert Clarizio. I've lived here for 53 years. I'm a father of 4 children. They're school age. They go to all different schools here. I'm a person from Simi Valley. And so I'm the average everyday guy. I've gone through all of it, coached the kids here, different sports. I probably talked to you on the streets. So I know Simi Valley at one time.
Okay, that is 15 seconds. I'm also just pulled up the timer on the screen for you guys now. That way you can see it, just for the future reference. Okay, awesome, thank you. Okay, so our next candidate is Robbie Hidalgo.
No worries, Aaliyah. Thank you for putting this on. I know it's a task. You're
All right. I do have two ladies running for okay. Then we'll be moving on to Phil Loos. He's running for City Council District 1.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Phil Loos. I think I have the vision to prepare Simi for today's challenges, tomorrow's challenges. I have the experience, the skills, the temperament to do this job well, and I love this city. I love the people who live here, and I just want to do right by everyone, and I look forward to voting. Thank you.
Hey guys, sorry about that. Geez.
Hey, these are hard. These are really hard things to coordinate, Aaliyah. Trust me.
Thank
Do
you.
what you can. Do what you can.
Yeah, no worries. This is actually making it really fun. Some of these things are too stuffy. So, you know, this is great.
And I think maybe if we remember the order that we're supposed to go in, we could maybe just keep on getting on through it. I don't remember who's next. I remember who I'm after, though.
Yeah, I'm lost too. I got this.
I
believe it may have been skipped.
Yes, Brandon was skipped, so.
Yeah, sorry about that, Brandon. Yeah, you can go ahead and go next. Sorry.
No worries. I'm Brandon. I'm just your average guy. I really just want to empower the community, get involved. We put too much power on the mayor and the city council when
research. I believe that these are the skills that I can bring in terms of a unique contribution to the school board. Thank you.
Thank you. And then that is it for our school board candidates. So after school board, it is now park board and Alex Avalos.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alexander Avalos, and I'm running for the Ranch Simi Park District. The reason I'm running is because I believe that we need a fresh perspective and somebody who's in more touch with the community. Because the Park District has, changed a lot in the last 20 years, while our incumbents have not.
Thank you. And then our next park board candidate is Elaine L. Freeman. Is she here today? I don't think so. All right, now we're moving on to Josh Gray then.
All right, I'm Josh Gray. I'm running for Rancho Simi Recreation and Park Board. Born and raised here in Simi. I became an Eagle Scout here, and I'm running to protect our open spaces, expand our after-school care, and grow our recreation programs for all our citizens. Thank you.
What do you guys have? Okay, and then after that, it is Kate O'Brien.
Hi, I'm Kate O'Brien. I am running for re-election to the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District. I've been doing this for a while, and I think my strongest qualification is that I've owned my own business for 20 years, and I've gotten very good at balancing time and constraints and money, all of which you need to do when you're on the park board. And serving the community is just part of my nature. Since I moved here in '97, I've been active in the community, and I was active in the community when I lived in Menlo Park. So I'd like to continue. That's it.
So next is our water board candidates, Kameren Chase Neal.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kameren Chase Neal. I was born and raised in Simi Valley. I'm running for the Calleguas Water Board because I know that water is essential to all life on our planet. I believe that we need quality, affordable, and safe water for everyone in our community. I'd like to bring a new voice. And I also have over 10 years experience with permit expediting, where I work with different municipalities throughout Southern California. And we work with tract home builders and engineers, and we have to figure out ways to collaborate.
Sorry, that's the end of 15 seconds.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. The next water board candidate is Thomas Slosson.
Hi, I'm Thomas Slosson. I'm running for the Water District Board for Calleguas. I'm currently the president of the board. I'm an engineering geologist with over 40 years of experience in groundwater, natural hazards, construction, and emergency response, and I've lived in Simi Valley for 34 years.
Thank you. So that is an introduction of all of our candidates. We will now be moving on to our first category and our first real question. This is for school board, Ms. Bagdasaryan. Curry Lev would like to know, what is your opinion on schools reopening at this time? What safety measures need to be in place in order for students and staff to be in a safe environment? You have 1 minute to answer this question, and the timer starts now. Sofya, you have to unmute yourself. All right, I'll start the timer over. And you may start now.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. I do not think that it is safe to reopen today. We need to take into account all the recommendations from the federal, state, county levels to carefully understand the risks that are involved based on our county's infection rates. Believe me, my kids are anxious to get back to school. I want them to get back to school. The social element, teacher interaction are all critical to their development, but that has to take second position to the health and safety of our children and staff. When it's time to reopen, there will be risks that need to be mitigated. This includes safety measures such as a less dense campus, sufficient custodial staff to sanitize consistently, and plexiglass separators in classrooms. These are all great ideas, but my main concern is also for the in-between class times when children are likely to naturally congregate. There needs to be sufficient numbers of hall monitors and yard duties to ensure that social distancing is followed. We know what to do, but we need the resources to do it.
Thank you. That was perfectly 1 minute. Something I also forgot to mention earlier during the whole recording scenario, I did give all of the candidates questions a few days in advance, so do not be surprised if any of them are reading off of timers or anything like that, because in order for them to keep their responses in such a 15-second or 30-second interval, most of them have prepared responses. Okay, thank you. So our next question is going to be for our mayoral candidates. So Sonar Moguel Rodriguez would like to know, how do you plan to help small local businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic? You each have 45 seconds to respond, and we'll be starting with Joe Ayala.
I would, as a first step, I would reach out to our Right Grants. Actually, we can do that to the county and the state and supplement and have some funding to help our local businesses endure these times of COVID. You know, as a city, we have to also maintain the ability to maintain a safe space in COVID. So I would move to enforce the state mandates with regards to people wearing masks when you go into businesses and making sure that those people are protected.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Robert Clarizio.
Yes, small business needs to happen, come back in a big way. Subsidize. I believe the city has the means to subsidize, especially younger entrepreneurs that want to come out. We can subsidize and help with getting them into spots, storefronts, or malls are empty. Also, another thing that's a good thing is the city could get involved in maybe purchasing some of these properties and give them a little facelift too. You know, so pretty much yes, subsidize. So thank you. You can see my sign.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Brandon Fortuna.
I'd like to echo what Joe said. We definitely need to reach out and get some federal grants going on for our local communities. Also, we keep talking about how all our local communities are the lifeblood of Simi and how their revenue tax and brings revenue to the city. So maybe we need to look into reallocating some money from the city's budget and putting it back into our community to keep them in business. As they say, you need money to spend money. Although I may not fully agree with that, I think in this instance it may work. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate and our last candidate for this question is Robbie Hidalgo.
And if I'm unmuted, I wanted to thank Sarna actually for this question, because this is one of the most critical overarching issues that we're confronting today. The pandemic is going to leave us in a circumstance yet to be determined. What I've done, as opposed to what I'm about to do, or what I propose doing, is I was instrumental in creating DES #1, which is an emergency ordinance, which is protecting commercial tenants from eviction for failure to pay rent as a result of their COVID-19 losses. I would continue that by seeking to have our Chamber of Commerce go out and start taking a relative poll of the economic condition of our local businesses so that we understand who's close to falling off the cliff, and we can start making those adjustments now.
Awesome, thank you. This next question is for both city council candidates and mayoral candidates. How do you plan to address problems of people ignoring or defying state and county health guidelines that put our community at risk during this pandemic? Each response should be kept under 45 seconds. We will start with the city council candidates, beginning with District 3. We would start with Elaine L here, but again, she's not here today. So we will be starting instead with TJ McInturf, but he's also not here today. So we'll be moving on to Ryan Valencia.
Yes, by default. Well, ultimately, we do have code enforcement, and that is under the Department of Environmental Services. So if you do see, any sort of issues happening, that's where you would go. And they do work with our county public health department. In terms of getting overly punitive, I don't believe in that. Ultimately, it's the social pressure that we need to apply, and making sure that the businesses that we're going to, that's how we reflect it, is in our dollars and how we spend it, and making sure that they're in compliance.
Thank you. Our next candidate is our only city council candidate for District 1 that's attending here today, Phil Loos.
Yeah, I largely agree with what Ryan said. I do think that the most effective pressure that can be put on those that do not comply is from the community. I do think that we need to have leaders who are out there modeling the behavior and trying to push this forward and help people understand the why this is an important thing. That's probably the most important thing to get people to change, is help them understand why. And so that's the number one thing. If we need to have more punitive measures going forward, then maybe that's something we could look at. But for the time being, we're on a good track, and I would stay the course with what we have now.
Thank you. Then we're going to move on to our mayoral candidate, starting with Robbie Hidalgo. And again, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. Actually, for the most part, I largely agree as well with other candidates. I don't think we should criminalize this issue, but the issue of leadership is quite critical. On March 17th, I'd submitted a COVID-19 response plan to our council, city manager, and city attorney, which addressed a communication strategy, which would give us a normal battle rhythm for our leadership to be able to get their arms around the community and guide us in the direction of compliance. It's really an issue of shared values. And when we lack that same governing moral ethic, that we should all wear a mask, we need to put that pressure on in a social capacity, as other candidates have mentioned. But I don't think criminalizing the wearing of a mask is the right idea.
Thank you. Next, we have Brandon Fortuna.
Hi. First of all, I think we definitely need to lead by example. We need to show what it is to keep our distance, wear a mask, keep all of our safe. I agree with everything that's been said, and essentially we just need to keep providing important information and keep others accountable on keeping our distance, keeping a mask. We just need to stay cognitive of that. I'll save the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Now Robert Clarizio.
Yes, we definitely need to set an example, lead by example, follow the rules, follow the experts. And then as people getting involved in government, we need to see if we can help the city manager to put a department head for the environmental services department, because they haven't had a boss since March of 2019. So that falls up right under that category for the city. So we got to do what we can, lead by example, and then see if we can help fill these vacant positions that, that this directly affects, they're directly related to a situation like COVID. So thank you.
Thank you. And then lastly, Joe Ayala.
Hi. Well, I would definitely actually probably take it a step further. There are certain places where you really just need to enforce. I know that there's been one bar in particular in Simi Valley who's never closed since the beginning of COVID, and with impunity, and the city is not enforcing that. And I have to say, as much social pressure as you want to apply, they're simply not going to do it. Sometimes enforcement is required. I don't agree in being punitive, but I do think that we need to be cognizant of the fact that people are getting sick, and this is a real thing. People are dying. If we're going to take this lightly, we're going to continue on this trend, and we're not going to be able to recover from COVID. Look at other countries, what they've done. Europe's been able to get a hold of this. Other countries have been able to get a hold of this. We still have trouble trying to get a hold of COVID. We're just now getting near it.
I'm sorry, Joe, your time is elapsed.
Thank
you. Next, we're going to be moving on to school board once again. Sofya Bagdasaryan, Catherine Saris would like to know, with the current distance learning plans, do you think going back to school for 2.5 hours a day is adequate? What are your plans to ensure our kids are being provided a high level of education, both in our current environment and post-COVID? You have 30 seconds to respond.
No, I do not think it's adequate, because if it was, we would have been doing it that way from the beginning. But my research background tells me to look where the data are. We have a whole country of schools that have already reopened for some time now, and there are successful models out there. So we need to look to those and implement them as appropriate here. To ensure that our kids are getting a high quality education, we need to support our teachers and our parents by making sure that they have the tools necessary in order to execute on some of these strategies that have been shown to work.
All right, thank you. So our next question is for all candidates, and it is pretty lengthy. The question is, will you enact and enforce all state and county directives with regard to COVID-19 for all employees, including yourself, which requires mandatory use of masks, social distancing, PPE use, and mandatory compliance with contact tracing, which includes disclosing large gatherings outside employment in order to keep all employees safe? I will also put this question in the chat. This is a yes or no question on policy, and when I say the name of the candidate, you may unmute yourself and say yes or no. Thank you. Our first candidate is Alex Avalos.
Absolutely, yes.
Elaine Freeman, not here. Josh Gray.
Yes.
Kate O'Brien. Sorry, was that a yes or a no? Thumbs up? Thumbs down?
That was a yes.
Yes, awesome. Next candidate is Kameren Chase Neal.
Yes.
Thomas Slosson.
Yes.
Phil Loos.
Yes.
Ryan Valencia.
Yes.
TJ is not here, and neither is Elaine. Brandon Fortuna. If you're saying something, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry. Yes.
Yes, awesome. Joe Ayala.
Yes.
Robbie Hidalgo.
Absolutely.
Robert Clarizio.
Absolutely, 100%. Yes.
Sofya Bagdasaryan.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Our next category is related to climate change and human interactions with the environment. Starting with our park board candidates, Zakia Couture submitted the following question. What will you do to protect and preserve our wildlife? You will each have 30 seconds to respond. Starting with Kate O'Brien.
Well, one of the things that I'm thinking is kind of cool, my neighbor has this thing called Repelzol that she uses, and it keeps animals, animals don't like the way it smells and they go away, but it keeps you from having to do anything like put poison out or anything like that. So that's one thing we can do. We pretty much leave the animals alone for the most part. So, but I would like to look into something like using that in lieu of poison. In fact, I did mention it a while back to our director of maintenance and operations. So,
Thank you. So then our next candidate is Josh Gray.
So one of the core issues of my campaign is protecting our open spaces. This keeps our hillsides free of construction, it keeps them clean, and it provides a healthy ecosystem for both our residents and the local wildlife. That's why I've also advocated for the Rim of the Valley campaign that preserves the natural beauty of our hills. It boosts local tourism with greater recreational and educational programs. And look, like I grew up hiking these hills as a Boy Scout, and I want to make sure they're there for future generations. And by preserving that space, you're also helping the wildlife.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Alex Avalos.
Yes, I think the question of preserving and protecting wildlife is probably the most important question we have there on the board. And I would say the incumbents have absolutely failed at that job. Because for one, they're using anticoagulant rat poison that was banned 15 years ago in Neal Valley. And this was proven for decades that this hurt wildlife, and it did. It killed a mountain lion just recently, and that's why they banned it. So I would have to ask, why did you continue to use this for 14 years when we already knew this was bad?
Thank you. We'll be moving on to this question for our mayoral candidates. Lori Sheridan has requested the following statement be read aloud.
Having 3 states completely on fire brings home the reality of the climate change crisis. Do you believe that climate change exists? Do you believe it's man-made? And what is your 5-year plan for Simi Valley to become fossil fuel energy independent? You will each have 1 minute to answer, and we'll start with Robert Clarizio.
This is a great question. Absolutely, I believe climate change is real. You know, I don't know what everybody else gets from that, but we could start right away with the city. A lot of just general trash pickup is handled, it's contracted out. City could take a little more control of that. It would create more jobs, city jobs. And then also another thing is, I used to think Simi Valley meant Windy Valley because it was an urban legend. It actually doesn't, right? So how about some wind power, you know? So I think this is things that is very important. The community needs to decide. Remember, the mayor is the voice of the community. But yeah, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see a lot more green energy here.
Thank you. Bill Ayala?
I hope everybody on this panel believes climate change is real. I certainly do. As you know, as far as a 5-year plan, what I would do to make us more energy independent, I think the state is already doing something in regards to making us energy independent by, or I should say fossil fuel independent by 2040 or 2035. But for our own city, I would recommend creating more charging stations for electric vehicles. We are moving off the electric or the gas vehicle. I think that's going to end pretty soon too. So that's one idea. There is a need to use commuter lines instead of using single person occupancy vehicles. So I would increase commuter like bus lines and train routes, make increased routes and that of that nature. I think those would be ways we could offset some of that, but we really need to get a hold of this before it gets a hold of us. We're in very serious trouble right now.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Robbie Hidalgo.
Thank you. You know, there are really 2 arms in addressing this move away from fossil fuels, and I have to agree. I think everybody here would agree that CO2 in our atmosphere is damaging us. One of those arms really depends on technology to some degree. We're addicted to fossil fuel because it's the density of the energy in the small package. So a gas tank can get a car to go 340 miles, whereas a charge can equivalent, depending on the size of the battery, can only get a car to move so far. In that arm, technology needs to catch up with us, as do economies of scale. But I think it's entirely possible. Industrial is going to be the area where we're going to have a challenge, and certainly at the civic level, no legislative authority. Smelters, making concrete, for example, steel, they require very high temperature that it's yet been difficult to ascertain how to move away from fossil fuels. As a community garden guy, I'll tell you something as simple as planting a garden in your backyard creates an incredible impact on carbon absorption, and it's something I would propose right out of the gate.
Thank you. Our last candidate is Brendan Fortuna.
Hi. I appreciate the city's push for solar, and I think we definitely need to keep going on that. As Robert also said, I think wind would be a great thing to harvest. It may look fugly in the hills, but 1 or 2 could make a huge impact. I also think we need to make our public transit more prominent. Unless you're in the know, you don't really know how to use that all too well. So we need to really educate ourselves on how to do that more often. Also, some incentives for using bikes to get around would also be very beneficial. I've appreciated seeing more charging stations around town as well, and that's an excellent way to go. We definitely need to increase those so we can have more electric vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. That is it for our mayoral candidates. Next question is for our park board candidates. Mary Platt has asked the incumbents, why does the Parks Department continue to use Roundup as weed killer when it's been suggested to cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and leukemia, as well as other lymphatic cancers? For the other candidates, do you agree with using Roundup? We'll start with Elaine Freeman, who is not here, so we'll be moving on to Kate O'Brien.
We do use it in very limited amounts. We are following the state and federal guidelines, and we make sure that all of our employees use the safety precautions before they use it. We buy the stuff at Walmart, or we buy the same strength of things at Walmart. If we didn't use it in some areas, our weeds would be so out of control that we'd have to hire many, many more people and spend a lot more time getting rid of the weeds, and we couldn't do anything else. So that's why we use it as little as we can, but that's why we use it when we use it.
Thank you so much. Our next candidate is Alex Avalos. And a reminder, you have 30 seconds.
So yes, I absolutely disagree with using Roundup. And to me, this is just another example of the current park board disregarding both the safety of wildlife and the community at large. For me, I would do everything I can, including banning all hazardous material, including all roadside rat poison, because they're all shown to be hazardous to the community.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Josh Gray.
So the health and safety of our residents is obviously essential. I'd be interested in reading some more scientific studies and also looking at how often the park board does utilize it and if there's ways to cut down, eliminate it, or find alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is for our water board candidates. Mary Platt would like to know, what is the most pressing issue facing our water board today, and what's your plan to solve it? Kameren Chase Neal, I'm going to start with you. You have 30 seconds to answer.
Well, our area has recently experienced prolonged drought, leading to a scarcity of accessible water. And the wildfire season seems to start earlier and end later every year that goes by, making it so important that we elect leaders that will proactively reach out to the community and make water a more prominent topic when discussing the challenges facing Simi Valley. When an issue has more attention, more community-approved solutions and resources will follow. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate is Thomas Slosson.
Yes, providing a reliable source of water, especially during emergencies or any hazards that occur, such as fires, is one of the important things for us. We do have it set up currently where during fires, the helicopters can come in and pick up water from Bard Reservoir to be able to put onto the fires as a quick turn. That happened during the Easy Fire. The other is, again, trying to do interconnections like we're doing with Las Virgenes to get more access to water that's out there, plus also our salinity management pipeline, which we're doing to try and allow areas to use groundwater desalters to be able to then.
I'm sorry, that's been 30 seconds. Thank you. Our next question is for our park board candidates one more time. Rebecca Alberian would be interested in hearing your answers to the following question. Will you support bringing Wi-Fi to our parks? We'll start with Kate O'Brien, and you have 30 seconds to respond.
Parks are places that people go to get away from tech and Wi-Fi. So I have to say, honestly, it's not really high on my list. Eventually, obviously, we're going to have, there's going to be Wi-Fi everywhere, but that's why it's not, because people need a place where they can get back to nature and not have to worry about high tech.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Alex Avalos.
Yeah, I completely disagree, where I think Wi-Fi in the parks is a really good idea for a few reasons. One, I believe this will give us the infrastructure to plan more elaborate events in the parks themselves, as well as it would give access to free Wi-Fi to anyone that's not available, either for school or work. So I think it's a brilliant idea.
Thank you. And then our last candidate is Josh Gray.
So Wi-Fi access is critical for underserved populations, and it is huge in closing the digital divide for a lot of residents, both in our community and in other communities. And we very much need to work on this as a Simi Valley community. And obviously during COVID, it's only become more important that kids and families and individuals have access to the internet. I'd be interested to see if Wi-Fi is the best way to make sure that those underserved communities get the access to Wi-Fi that they need.
That is 30 seconds. Thank you. This question is for all candidates, and we will be starting with the water board. This is a yes or no question, and we'll be starting with Thomas Slosson. Do you commit to advocating for the full cleanup of the Santa Susana Field Lab to background levels?
Yes.
Kameren Chase Neal?
Absolutely.
Sofya Bagdasaryan?
Yes.
Ryan Valencia?
Yes, and I would also commit to making sure that the neighborhoods around it are protected.
It's a yes or no question. Thank you. Phil Loos?
Yes.
Robbie Hidalgo?
Absolutely.
Brandon Fortuna?
Hell yeah.
Joe Ayala?
Yes.
Robert Clarizio?
Yes.
Josh Gray?
It's a complicated question. I want to ensure the health and safety of our residents.
Thank you. Elaine Freeman is not here. Kate O'Brien. You are muted.
Oh, sorry, yes. Been an issue since I've been living here.
Alex Avalos.
Yes.
Thank you. That is all of our candidates. That concludes our climate change and human interactions with the environment category. We will now be moving on to racial tension and general divisiveness in Simi Valley. This question is for our city council candidates. Matt Finton asks, in this time of unprecedented strife and political division, it is imperative that local leaders represent and listen to the community as a whole. How will you work to best represent all people in your jurisdiction? And do you have plans that can help repair the existing divisions and bring back a sense of unity to our community? You have 1 minute to answer this question, and we will be starting with Phil Loos.
So yeah, we're in a period right now where there's quite a bit of division in the community, and unfortunately, I think some of that division stems from the behavior that we see up on the council, and so I think we need to be more professional, and we need to remember that and to humanize one another. People often don't care what you have to say until they know that you care, and so I think that's where we start with this, being professional from the council. But I think we need to be proactive about, addressing some of the issues, especially around race in our community, to make sure that we're leading the way, that we're not the ones that are just following or that we're not doing anything about it, but we can be proactive and we can be prescriptive. But I think it starts with us.
Thank you. Ryan Valencia.
Well, great question. And I think first and foremost, it's really comes down to our conduct. When I started, right after the filing deadline, the first thing I did was give a shout out and recognize my opponents in Council District 3, because we're all here for the best of intentions. We want to see our community thrive. We want to see our community do well. We want our neighbors to have a great quality of life. And so ultimately, we're going to all have different perspectives, but you just know that I am going to make sure that I represent you to the best of my ability, no matter what party, no matter what background you come from, you have a place, in my office. So.
Thank you. This next question is for our mayoral candidates. Dimitri Erman would like to know, what is your vision for Simi Valley as a community in terms of jobs and culture in 5, 10, and 20 years from now? You have 1 minute to answer this question, and we will start with Joe Ayala.
I was thinking about this the other day because I was looking at what we can do to make our community more united. We have a great opportunity with our town center right now to do something with that would literally bring the community together. If anybody's gone to, there's a place in Burbank that has a long strip. It is a huge gathering place. People of all ages go together, get together there. There's a movie theater. We've already got the movie theater. They have a lot of places to eat and places to hang out. Kids of all, kids, adults, everybody hangs out there. It's a great gathering spot. And I think it would bring in revenue, a lot of revenue to the city, but it would also make the city an inclusive place. It would bring people together. So that's a short plan. I'm really not sure how much time you gave me, Aaliyah, because this has been kind of and I don't want to go over my time, but that's an initial thought as to ways we could bring people together and to increase revenue in our city.
Thank you. Each candidate has 1 minute. And the question is, what is your vision for Simi Valley as a community in terms of jobs and culture in 5, 10, and 20 years from now? Our next candidate is Robert Clarizio.
Okay, so my vision for Simi Valley is definitely healing what's going on right now first. Everything else falls into place. Heal the people. So as a mayor candidate, you want to represent the whole diversity of people in this community. With that being said, you have youth coming up now, the younger generations. They need to be chasing their dreams and having a passion, because that keeps them on the right track. And it also, breeds more of that. It just, it inspires people. So I think we start with our youth and our community and build some cultural, like with the cultural arts. We need more cultural arts. We need more skateboard parks. I'll tell you, that thing's a hit. We need more stuff for the kids to do. That'll create more jobs and also bring people out to do stuff. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Our next candidate is Brandon Fortuna.
I'm having some technical difficulties, so I apologize if I keep cutting in and out. As far as the job situation go, I would like to see it be predominantly local businesses within at least like 80% within the next few years or so. As far as culture goes, I would love to foster a culture of inclusivity, empathy, and unity. I'm tired of walking down the street and having slurs thrown at me and my friends for the way we look, the way we act, things of the sort. So I would just love to foster inclusivity and empathy. I'll cede my time. Thank you.
Thank you. And then our last candidate for this question is Robbie Hidalgo.
Well, I'm going to pick up right there with culture. I think the core of what needs to change, particularly in this moment in time, there's so much divisiveness and there's so much pull in our community that reunifying our community has to be our vision, not only for the next 3 years, 5 years, and 20 years, but it's really at the core of our ability to start to make a difference in any of the other issues, is reunifying our community. With regard to jobs, it's an interesting time to inquire about that because of the impact of COVID. So, and this will probably come up in a housing conversation at some point, but as an example, the idea of workforce housing. What workforce housing was in the past may not be the same in the future when you find out that all the Twitter employees are now never going to return to an office, they're going to work from home. So what does the future housing element look like? Do we have to ensure that there's broadband infrastructure at a certain bandwidth going to each home? And with the pace of technology, it's difficult to get a 20-year look, but I would fall back on my initiative for Vision 2030, which is to pull together a consortium within our community who can take a 10-year outlook on jobs, housing, social issues, and the other challenges that we have before us.
Thank you. This question is also for the mayoral candidates from Rebecca Albarian. What kind of anti-racism plan, if any, will you implement at the city level?
Who's first?
Yes, I'm sorry. That'd be really helpful. Robbie Hidalgo.
Well, it's interesting because we were just talking about shared values a question or so ago, and we've talked about this a lot as candidates in other forum. No human being, as we've all attested, everybody in this forum, we can spare them that effort of responding. No human being should ever be targeted or treated in any discriminatory way as a result of race, ethnicity, sexual identification, gender identification, or handicap. That being said, there is no easy legislative policy. We can't outlaw racism. We have to accept it verbally from a leadership position. We have to own that racism is an integral part of the human experience.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Brendan Fortuna.
I would like to expand as far as it all essentially
Brendan, I don't know if it's just me, but you're cutting out a little bit. One thing that's helpful, if you want to make the connection better, you can always turn your camera off and then just connect through the audio. That might be better. Sorry. And if you want to start over, I didn't hear any of your response.
Okay. As far as racism goes, I believe we need better diversity training at all job levels. It all comes down to education. I would love to see a more diverse school curriculum so they can learn about different cultures and peoples. I believe 805 Resistance in the Conejo Valley was able to help the school board implement a more diverse school curriculum, and I would love to see that around here, and I think that'd be very impactful in our racism. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Robert Clarizio.
Yes, this is a great question. Most people don't know this. English was not my first language. My parents both came here from Italy, and we spoke Italian. And so my father, who's very dark, was called the wetback, at work. And that was my first memory of my first English words was wetback. And we were forbidden to speak anything but English after that. So I'd like to see us not run from this, but set the bar so the other cities, could copy us, how we figure it out. So yeah, I'd like to get a committee together of all people, diverse backgrounds.
Thank you, Robert. Sorry, that is over 30 seconds.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, thank you. Our next question is from Christopher French. With 50% of our city budget going to police in Simi Valley, explain.
Excuse me, Leah. You didn't ask me that question.
Oh, sorry, Joe. I'm so sorry. Okay,
That's okay.
Sorry. Joe.
I know, I told you, it's a lot of stuff going on. I totally get it. It's okay. I just thought that would be a great one for me. But okay, it's okay. Anyway, I'm obviously a multicultural person. As mayor, I would denounce, and I would not tolerate racism in the city. It's not something that, obviously every city has some degree of racist element. I don't have to look far, literally down my street, to see a neighbor who's got a half American, half Confederate flag hanging out the front of his house. Is that a racist thing? I'm not sure, because I'm not sure what he's thinking. Maybe he likes those colors of flags. I think that people that are walking around and preaching hate and yelling at people and intimidating people.
I'm sorry, Joe, that is 30 seconds.
All right, cool. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
The next question is from Christopher French, and he would like to hear from our city council. With 50% of the city budget going to police in Simi Valley, explain your position on police funding and city services funding going forward. Each candidate has 45 seconds to respond, and we'll be starting with Phil Loos.
Well, let me just first say that I am as concerned about maintaining a safe community as any person here. I just think we need to do it in an effective and a cost-effective manner. The exact amount that is budgeted for the police department is 49.7%, and I think it's a valid concern to wonder whether that is sustainable or necessary, especially when Moore Park and Thousand Oaks spend about 41 and 37% of their budgets while achieving superior crime statistics than we do. But one way we might be able to follow suit is to listen to the suggestion of Chief Livingstone, which is that when we have upcoming retirements in the department, we may not need to backfill those positions and can save the city money in that way. And I would also expect that we would review the line item expenditures of the department to ensure that we're spending responsibly, just as we would with any department. But this is a concern, and we do need to look at it very carefully.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Ryan Valencia.
Well, thank you. And I know that this has been a common question, especially in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement, that's forcing every single city to have this conversation. You know, ultimately, as has been asked of me a few times now, no, I do not support just arbitrarily defunding the police department. But going forward and simultaneously, what I've been upset with has been some folks who then need to attack the social services component, which is a key component to a lot of prevention of crime too. You know, we have a fantastic police department that does very effective response to keep our communities safe, and social services and community services help keep our kids off the street. They help seniors have the care that they need and not being preyed upon. It's such a critical component too. So absolutely, we need to go forward and see if there's areas that the county's lacking in providing those services and where the city can step up.
That is 45 seconds. Thank you. Sofya Bagdasaryan, this is a question for our Simi schools. Bruce has a question about the 1619 project. The 1619 project is a method of teaching that reframes U.S. history to focusing on its relationship with African Americans and enslaved people. It is named after the first year slaves were brought to the United States. Their question is, would you be in support of having the 1619 project implemented if elected? You have 30 seconds to respond.
I would support that, but with the understanding that the repercussions of slavery be reflected all throughout the time periods of our country, as well as other oppressions like with the Japanese internment. We all know that history is written by the victors, but it is so important to have the voices of everyone else be included and heard. I remember when my ancestors' history of genocide was given only 2 lines in my high school history book. It made me feel really small and that my ancestors were unimportant. No child should have to feel that way.
Thank you. Thank you. For our city council candidates, Christopher French would like to know, in 15 seconds or less, describe how you envision Simi Valley being different by the end of your term if elected. 15 seconds is about 1 sentence. We'll start with Ryan Valencia.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second on my end. Can you repeat the question? Oh, okay, let's see here. Describe how I envision being different. Well, I think the main goal here is sustaining what the promise of Simi Valley is: the safe streets, the mom and pop feel, the beautiful hillsides. And so we have to make those necessary changes or reforms to keep that sustainability going. So what I hope is that at the very end of this, we're thriving as an economy, not just surviving. You, right here.
Thank you. Phil Loos.
Sorry, I mute myself. One, you would absolutely see more transparency from our local government and more citizen engagement. That's a huge priority of mine, and that's day one, something I would work on. 2, I would have us begin working towards specific plans to redevelop the economically depressed areas of the city. And 3, Simi would be actively working towards being a more inclusive place.
Thank you. This next question is for all candidates. This is a yes or no question. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Are you willing to enact and enforce policies that guarantee that all employees are treated equally, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, or gender orientation from the very first day you are elected? We'll start with Josh Gray.
Yes.
Elaine Freeman is not here. Kate O'Brien.
Yes, we'll continue.
Alex Avalos.
Yes.
Kameren Chase Neal.
Yeah, definitely.
Thomas Slosson.
Yes.
Sofya Bagdasaryan.
Yes.
Ryan Valencia.
Yes.
Elaine Litzer is not here. Phil Loos.
Of course, yes.
Robbie Hidalgo.
Absolutely.
Brandon Fortuna.
Hell yeah.
Joe Ayala.
I echo Brandon's words.
Robert Clarizio.
C, yes.
Thank you. Our last question on the topic of racial tension and general divisiveness in Simi Valley is another all-candidate question. Do you recognize that POC, that stands for people of color, have faced disproportionate challenges in our community? This is a yes or no question, but candidates may expand their answers up to 15 seconds if necessary. Joe Ayala, you may start.
Yes, and I have had that encounter personally. So there is and I have heard of many of my friends who have told me these similar stories. So yes, it is a problem, and we need to address that issue.
Thank you. Robert Clarizio.
Yes, and I echo Joe. I've had that same experience. So yes.
Thank you. Brandon Fortuna.
Yes, it is a huge problem and it needs to stop. Thank you.
Robbie Hidalgo.
Y yo también, I completely agree.
Ryan Valencia.
Yes, and we're always striving to be better and better, and we are evolving, and I truly believe Simi Valley is a special place for that reason.
Thank you. Phil Loos.
I do, and I believe the city should be the one leading the charge to try and change the environment here.
Thank you. Kameren Chase Neal.
Yes, I'm proud of my ethnicity. I can't do anything to change it, so I think that it's really important that we start to open up the doors for folks that want to get involved and that we take care of them.
Thank you. Thomas Slosson.
Yes, I believe there are many challenged and disadvantaged people in our community that need our help and support and things to be able to change.
Thank you. Josh Gray.
Yes.
Elaine Freeman is not here. Kate O'Brien.
Yes, I'm not a person of color, so I have to take on faith what my non-white friends and colleagues tell me, and if they tell me there's a problem, which they have, then there probably is. Yeah, I'd have to go along.
Thank you. Alex Avalos.
Yes, absolutely. And, not only do I believe in it, I've also experienced it as well. Even campaigning around here, there's definitely times where I felt uncomfortable. I felt like, they didn't want me to be there. So definitely yes.
Thank you. And finally, Sofya Bagdasaryan.
Yes, and I would say not just here. Research has shown that this is a national problem.
Thank you. Our last category is about Simi's economy, transparency, and engagement. Mary Platt would like to hear from our mayoral candidates. Over the past several years, maybe even longer, the city has reduced the number of employees in order to help balance the budget. What's your plan to balance the budget? You have 30 seconds to respond. We'll start with Brandon Fortuna.
I would like to take the portions that have most of the budget and redistribute that to where we feel we need more of the budget, so we can have more city officials, more people to have. I'm stumbling on my words. I'm sorry. I cede my time.
That's all right. Thank you. Our next candidate is Robbie Hidalgo.
Well, we absolutely cannot cut our way to fiscal solvency. This has been tried. We've already frozen positions. We're critically low on social supports within the community. I'm not an advocate that we can find those savings there. Economic development, absolutely the bottom line. This city needs to generate more revenue. That impacts jobs, that impacts our quality of housing, disposable income, supports restaurants, and also we have to look at pensions. There's just no way around it, and consider replacing pensions moving forward, not for those who are already pensioners, with defined contribution plans as a way of mitigating the long-term impact.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Joe Ayala.
Revenue is the key. We need to increase revenue in the city. We need to create jobs that are middle-class jobs, workforce jobs. We need to look at our affordable housing and making sure that those jobs exist here in Simi Valley and there are places for those people to live. Without those two components, it's very difficult to move forward and create a real equal system. So I would look at, and the other part of that is you have to find ways to, obviously, I'm not a job cutter or especially, I disagree with Robbie on this issue. I would not look at, as a union leader, I think the pensions are a promise that's made to the workforce that services the city.
Thank you. That is 30 seconds. Sorry, Joe. Our next candidate is Robert Clarizio.
Yes, to echo everybody, cutting the workforce, everybody tries that. Never works. Matter of fact, they should probably hire, because what ends up happening is everybody's working overtime. So looking at the budget, we got orientated on the budget. It's just in line with everybody else, but you can see the red flags where there's overtime. And then also there's vacant positions that are key that need to be filled. They've been empty for over a year. So those people need help in finding, people to fill these spots. There's 15 sub-departments under one of the most critical was.
You're Robert.
Okay.
Sorry. Our next our next question is from Dimitri Erman for Sofya Bagdasaryan. What would your plan be to address the growing costs of our public school systems and limited budgets that impact actual student education compared to overhead and liabilities? You have 45 seconds to answer.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We need cost-effective strategies so that teachers can do their jobs. I like those that are proposed by the Brookings Institute. First, a systematic needs assessment with community partners needs to happen to ensure that there are no duplication of services. Second, tutoring provided by peers and volunteers has been found to be effective and it's free. And third, targeted comprehensive supports. We need to leverage community-based services that focus on students' physical, mental, and nutritional needs. Our community is generous, and so I would just say, let's ask for help.
Thank you. Our next question is for our mayor and city council candidates. Rebecca Albarian would like to know, what 3 immediate actions do you plan to take regarding workforce housing and addressing the needs of unhoused folks in Simi Valley? Each candidate has 1 minute to respond. Elaine Litzer is not here, neither is TJ McInturf, so by default, our next candidate is Ryan Valencia.
Great question. And one thing I want to get started with immediately is getting involved in building coalitions along identified areas of our general plan as to where those opportunities are to do so. For example, the Los Angeles Avenue area. Because sometimes we do hear from neighbors, residential neighbors in these areas as to what they want to see in the planning process, but we also have to hear from small businesses too. Some of the future, for example, workforce housing that's going into the Thousand Oaks area along Teo Boulevard is because of the Boulevard Association. Small businesses have stated, we want a multi-generational community here. We want housing to be available for our workforce. So building those coalitions, I think, are going to be great for specific planning of those areas of our general plan. I think additionally, exploring what inclusionary housing policies we can also do as incentives for developers to have some percentage, some components of whatever project that they're building being affordable to our working class folks. And I think additionally looking at the permitting process. We know that it's 6 figures in a lot of cases just going through the permitting process for building these areas, and we don't want to stall that.
Thank you. That's 1 minute. Our next candidate is Phil Loos.
Gosh, I mean, Ryan just took the answers right out of my book there, but no, that was dead on. Everything Ryan just said is exactly right. The coalitions are essential to making sure we're understanding what the businesses need, what the communities need, and that we're working with them. I'm just going to take a different tack here or go a different direction, but I just want to highlight the importance of this issue for 3 reasons. One, this is a state mandate that says we must build affordable housing here, and we are way behind when it comes to meeting those goals. Affordable housing is going to be also important to our equation to help fight back against the brain drain that we see happening when young people grow up here and can't come back because it's too expensive. And 3, the rent is increasing on so many citizens here. Severely rent burdened or a rent burden, meaning they have like 50% of their income going to rent. So we definitely need to make strides. Yeah, but what Ryan said is really exactly right. Approach this.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Robbie Hidalgo.
Well, this is a great question. I want to clarify as well as I move into it. The unhoused folks component, I presume, also means our homeless population. And so I'm going to try to address that in the time allowed. First of all, we have a wonderful opportunity right in front of us, and that is that the housing element is up for renewal within the general plan, and that's expiring in 2021. Absolutely, the first thing I would do is pull a consortium together, as both Phil and Ryan were discussing, to take a look specifically at the housing element and try to define for us what workforce housing does look like in the future. I brushed on this earlier. Are we talking about new broadband capacity? What does the workforce community look like in the future? And do we want to draw them into our city? I would also have staff immediately look up land trusts and do some research on successful projects in Denver, for example, because inclusionary zoning has never provided us the quantity of affordable houses that we need. Save Park Simi, I would initiate immediately as the first step towards addressing the homelessness problem.
Awesome, thank you. Our next candidate is Brendan Fortuna.
Hi. First of all, it's hard to compete with those sentiments. I would love to echo what both Ryan and Phil said. That's the best way to go about it. Speaking of the unhoused folk, I believe we need to get the more days open at the Samaritan Center. From my understanding right now, they're open 4 days a week. I believe we would benefit from a 5th day. Also, getting a homeless shelter in town would also benefit a lot of our unhoused folk. If the city won't do it, we're going to have to help our homeless people ourselves. We need to be part of the solution. We need to help out the homeless and give them jobs as well. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next candidate is Robert Clarizio.
I'm just gonna echo like Brandon said, because we're short on time. All that information's out there, like Robbie spoke, and echo all those words of everybody has been speaking. My different take on it is get in there and rehab existing structures. Also, make it more affordable instead of affordable housing. There's creative financing out there because of COVID. That's a good thing. It brought to light. There's people buying $80,000 trucks and $150,000 motorhome or trailers behind them. They're getting financed at. They can do that with housing and make an affordable payment so people can get back into home ownership. The younger generation that's living at home at 30, so they can have more pride. Homeless shelter, yes, absolutely. We need more homeless shelters, and to look at the mental factor of that too. Also, mental health, huge. So yeah, that's a big one for me. I want a team on that right away of the community. Anybody wants to get involved. So big issues right there.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Brandon Fortuna.
I've already answered.
Sorry.
Yeah, you missed me, Aaliyah.
Yeah, Joe Ayala, sorry.
It's 2 times you've done that today. I'm leaving.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. Yeah, obviously, affordable housing is a serious problem in Simi Valley. We have to look for ways to address that. There are already development plans for some affordable housing in the city of Simi, but we need to look at creating more workforce housing for our workers and for our future. There are, along our 118 corridors, there are places that we could build that are not going to be impacting our open spaces. And in the dense urban, part of the city, there are places where you could build, and also in the at the Simi Town Center. I was bringing that up earlier, and I was talking about that development in Burbank, where it's kind of a mixed development. They have some housing and they have things for people to do. So both of those things together, they could be affordable housing projects. Affordable housing nowadays isn't $500,000. It's it's not even $300,000. You can't. It's very difficult. We have to provide a future path for our children. I want to see my daughters grow up in Simi Valley. I don't want to see them leave the city. So these are the things that I'd like to do to make keep the housing in the town. And lastly, we need to create social programs, community service programs to help our homeless population. You can write grants to the city and the state, or the county and the state, to get that done.
Thank you. So our city council candidates, how will you address homelessness in our city? Do you support providing housing and shelter? You have 45 seconds to respond, and we're going to start with Phil Loos.
It always kind of makes me shake my head when we discuss homelessness, and missing from the discussion is making sure that people have homes. So, research has shown the best approach to this is what's called a housing first, meaning that we actually give people permanent housing. And with that housing then comes wraparound services. So things like mental health services, drug treatment, getting them connected to job programs. But this, of course, requires funding. And so not only should it be a priority for the council after recovery from COVID-19, but we should also be lobbying hard from the county and the state, and even maybe private funding to help to ensure that we can provide the housing that we need to the homeless to fix this.
Thank you. Ryan Valencia?
Thank you, and I appreciate that there's a question specifically for our unhoused neighbors. And this is a multi-layered issue, right? Some folks like to just blame one thing or the other, but when it comes to homelessness, it is addiction, it can be affordable housing, it could be mental health issues, all this. It's an all of the above approach that we have to approach this. I would love to see the street outreach program that the Simi Valley Police Department does in partnership with social services be expanded, and make sure that we're getting folks the wraparound services that they need. But I agree with Phil. It's housing first, wraparound services to get them off the street. Sometimes it's as simple as one case was told to me in my the homelessness count that we did recently. It was just as simple as getting them a social security card so that they could get off the street, get the benefits that they needed. And so those direct interactions are absolutely necessary to care for them.
Thank you. This question is for just mayoral candidates. Kathleen Capella would like to see more art, theater, and music available for both the young and old. Do you have any plans to make available affordable classes and clubs for people to attend? The Senior Center has some nice programs and the park has a few. Is it possible to expand and encourage more things like this for people to do, especially for the young? You have 45 seconds to respond, and we're going to start with Joe Ayala.
I'm terribly sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, and I'll throw it in the chat too. Kathleen Capella would like to see more art, theater, and music available for both the young and old. Do you have any plans to make available affordable classes and clubs for people to attend? The Senior Center has some nice programs and the park has a few. Is it possible to encourage and expand more things like this for people to do, especially for the young? You have 45 seconds to respond, and if at any point you forget, you can ask me again, and it's also in the chat.
I've got it. Actually, I have a musical background. My family is in the arts. My son is taking his master's degree in music right now at the University of Texas because he wants to be a music teacher. My daughters are they actually both got a dance, and they're in dance at Santa Sue. That is very near dear to my heart, and I think we do need to create programs. I've been kind of talking about this. I've said this about 3 or 4 times tonight, but I'm going to sound like a broken record. But we can seek grants from the county and state to fund these programs with very little cost to the city itself. They're necessary. They bring a sense of togetherness to the city. There's things to do now. One of the things that I hear complaints from my kids, and I'm sure that there's a few people on this call that'll say the same thing, there's nothing to do in Simi Valley. What do we do here? There's only one skating rink. They just opened up another one. There's other things we can do to bring the youth together. But that's a very important part of that. So I think that that's what I would try and do. Reach out to the state, to the county and the state, and bring grants in so we could do that.
Robert Clarizio, it's your turn to respond. You have 45 seconds.
Yes, again, God bless you, Kathleen, for that question. I brought it up earlier. I'd like to see that passion. And I brought up, yes, cultural arts. Let's bring it out there. And yes, there's actually grants already available. Seeking them is very easy. So it's a yes for me. Again, the mayor's position is to stand with you, Kathleen, and with everybody else to see our community thriving and becoming more diverse and getting the passion. It's really about passion and dreams back instead of just becoming one-dimensional. So yes, stand with you in unison and go in front of the city council and hope we can pick up our 3 votes that we would need to make that happen right away. See a lot of that stuff. So,
thank you. Brandon Fortuna, you have 45 seconds to respond.
We definitely need to make the arts and music prominent again. Coming from the punk rock and ska scene, we used to throw a lot of backyard shows in town because we didn't have any venues to go to. And after a while, we had like 1 or 2 venues that we would throw shows at, but then all those ended up getting shut down. So we need all ages venues for people who want to throw music recitals or bands for the homies, things of the sort. We also need art galleries. I would love to partner with Parks and Rec and get more music classes and art classes available to the public. I know we have some in place, but it's hard for people to know about them unless you're in the know. So we need to do better about letting these things be known among the community. I would love to see more music more dancing programs as well. I know it's a great thing for the senior community to get involved in dancing and things like that and keep your joints moving, and it's a good social way. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Our next candidate is Robbie Hidalgo.
Well, this is a great topic. I really appreciate it. I too come from a theatrical background. I grew up in New York City, a bit of a theater brat. My mother's a conductor, so arts has been a huge part of my life and part of my profession as well. Several ideas, because we have cost barriers. In addition to looking at grants, as the vice president of the community garden, I advocated very strongly for us to start bringing outdoor music elements, whether we're having a concert outdoors or theatrical, like a green show, similar to a pre-Shakespearean type of event. Brandon, I've got good news for you. I have quietly worked in the background as an entertainment technology professional, helping to refurbish one of our local venues to become an age-open public venue for theater and for music, and you'll definitely be playing there. In addition to that, there is a vision I have for the town center. There's not enough time to talk about it, but this would include public-private partnerships.
Thank you. For our mayor and city council candidates, a community member would like to know, what measure will you take to improve public transportation to Simi Valley / Ventura County? You have 1 minute to answer. Oh, starting with Ryan Valencia.
Great, and I hope to utilize our voice on VCTC for this reason. Now, there's a few things that I'm interested in. One is that actually within our general plan, we highlight that eventually you want a second metro stop here in Simi Valley. In particular, it's in the Los Angeles Avenue area is where we could possibly put something. So that'd be interesting. But I think first and foremost, double tracking that line in order to make sure that those intervals of waiting between each of those times is reduced, because you miss that train once, you're going to be waiting for a while before it comes again. And so getting smart in terms of planning, especially with transit lines, I would like to see, we talked about workforce housing a little bit earlier, identifying along those transit lines how we can ensure that instead of folks needing to drive, and we don't want to create that traffic pressure, maybe there's a way that we can plan it well so that it's in line with that metro stop or in line with the bus stop, thinking smart in development. And then additionally, just taking a look at where our critical needs are and where we can really have that relationship with VCTC to help fill in those gaps. I think that we waited a little bit too long to finally get that Moore Park College line that is a lot of more direct. But that's how we have to think going forward.
Thank you. Phil Loos.
Yeah, we're sort of in this vicious cycle where we cut the public transit budget, which cuts the routes and the speed, which makes fewer people want to take it, which means further cuts. And it's sort of this, it builds on itself. So it is a conscious decision to want to invest in it. But, that I think as Ryan touched on, I think the planning part of this is directly tied to whether we're going to want to invest in public transit. And that requires to have mixed use type developments, walkable areas where people are going to want to take public transit. But it needs to be a conscious choice to invest. And this means reviving our local economy so that we can pay for this and get further funds from the county as well. But ultimately it's tied to planning and tied to a conscious choice to invest.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Robbie Hidalgo.
Sorry, hopefully I'm muted. Picking up from where Phil left off, there's a huge connection to our economic development here because our local public transportation is an enormous component of our budget. Particularly if you talk to senior communities, you'll find they want to be able to keep the dollar right services. And so this is a challenge that's going to impact as well based on our workforce housing plan coming up. We have the opportunity to rework that. That'll let us look at some of the zoning issues and let us know where public transportation is needed. VCTC probably wants to kick me out the door as much as I harass them about a variety of issues with Ventura County Transit. One of the things that I'm a huge advocate of is the beach bus idea, being able to get to and from Simi on weekends for people. And in addition to that, I'll be the first guy to step up and say, to whatever your response, we need some of the scooters and bicycles at some of our transit hubs. We've got youth that get to a certain spot, but they're still 8-9 blocks away from where they need to go, and they've been calling for this.
Thank you. Our next candidate, Robert Clarizio.
Okay, man, I'm old because I've been writing that stuff since before we had it. So it has really come a long way. It's awesome. We have one of the best. I've used public transit almost all across the country, almost in every state. It's fantastic. Again, a lot of these issues that are coming up with the development of this and planning and cutting the budget falls underneath this assistant city manager's vacant position. It's been vacant for over a year. So I think getting them some help and finding somebody so they have a boss would help a lot. And also working with the community. Remember, the mayor's position is to work together with everybody else and bring this transparency. And most of the community doesn't know that there's a problem. So bring it out there, talk to everybody, and transparency is big on this budget thing, because of course it's going to be a big part of the budget, but it's needed, it's necessary, especially if you write it, which I do. So.
Thank you. Joe Ayala?
Locally, I mean, our bus routes are too few and far between to be convenient for most people to use. I mean, more saturation of routes and expansion of those routes is needed. I know they changed bus routes recently, but it's too soon to see if they're going to be effective. And I'm going to wait to decide on that one. The biggest issue in my view is the connectivity between Simi, Moore Park, and Thousand Oaks. We need to have city, county, and cooperation for that to happen. I mean, that's what I would lobby for that. I would talk to the county and bring that as much like Robbie and a few of the other folks said. We have to speak to them so we can increase those routes so that public transportation will be more effective and people will want to use it.
Thank you. Our next question is for our.
Aaliyah, I wasn't asked. Sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'm the worst at this. Okay. Sorry, Brandon, you can go ahead.
No worries. I'll make it quick. I'd like to echo basically what's been said, but I would also like to add that we need to educate the public on how to use it more. I know the layperson doesn't really know much about our Simi Valley Transit, so we need to maybe take out some ads or put in things in the money mailers so people know about the bus routes and bus schedules, as well as the metro lines and things of the sort. I know they redid them recently, and they look way more confusing than they used to. I understand we're hurting for funds for transit, but we need to do away with having to pay to switch from one bus to another. I know we used to be able to do that from the B bus to the C bus to get into Chatsworth, but now if our route doesn't align, we need to hop on another bus. You need to repay for that fare. And if we get the community, sorry.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Our next question is for our city council candidates. John Laffer would like to know, what is your plan to revive and save the Simi Town Center / mall? You have 1 minute to answer, and we're going to start with Phil Loos.
Well, the mall was built in a bygone era where retail was maybe something that was viable, but not anymore. If we're going to make that area work, it's going to need to have a housing component. It's going to need to have an entertainment component. It's going to need to be mixed use, which means maybe a corporate component with offices. But all of that is going to have to really change the way we look at that area and how we reinvest there, especially with COVID. What businesses are going to thrive and come back after COVID? It may not be the corporate office that it was even before this year. It may even be worse for retail going forward. So I do think it has to probably be entertainment focused and housing. There's no doubt in my mind that if we're going to revitalize it, we'll have to be a component of that. But one thing I've always said is mall, it may be elsewhere in the city where we kind of have the revitalization. You have to think outside the box, and maybe there's areas on Tapo Street or LA Avenue where we have some opportunities to reinvest and make those some mixed use communities. But if we are going to revitalize the mall, that's the way we're going to have to do it.
Thank you. Ryan Valencia?
Well, I've been blessed in having the town center in my district. So I look forward to being an active stakeholder in this and trying to revitalize the town center. I think ultimately, there's owners and there's developers involved. And so being that stakeholder in active communication is important to get their input, to get the input of the surrounding neighborhoods as well. I think ultimately there's a few questions that I'll have for any project that's proposed. How do we have consistent day and night traffic? So for example, we've mentioned entertainment. I think absolutely that's where we're thriving in the Simi Valley Town Center. That's where we should be going. I think of things like the Canyon out in Santa Clarita, which is a country music venue. Sometimes it's an event space. Those are the types of things that are irreplaceable versus when we're thinking about in a new economy, the reduction of retail going on to online, or the fact that inventories are shrinking because data is being collected from surrounding communities and knowing what the inventory looks like. You can't rely on retail and office space going forward because it is ever changing. Those irreplaceable things like the museum that we have there from our Tech VFW museum that I hope will continue to be there no matter what, or the Skateboard Hall of Fame, all those making it the heartbeat of our community is going to be important.
Moving away from Simi's economy and closer to our transparency and accountability category, Kimmy Taguchi has a question about the Brown Act for our city council candidates. The Brown Act is a law in California that requires local government decisions be made during meetings that are open to the public. She has made the following statement. It is also really long, so I will be throwing it in the chat. The city of Simi Valley is over 12 months behind on uploading their meeting minutes and has not been compliant with California's Brown Act. There have been multiple occasions where our city council members voted on integral laws behind closed doors, causing a huge lack of trust in the community and a stern warning from the district attorney. How will you approach the lack of transparency on the dais? She has also included in her notes that the City Council violated California's Brown Act by failing to issue proper notice of assembly and failing to publish an agenda prior to a public town hall meeting. They also discussed and took comments on public business, Senate Bill 54, among other topics, at an event meant to honor a Simi Valley soldier killed in Afghanistan. They received a warning from the district attorney. She lists her sources from the DC Star, the official California Legal Code government website, and USA Today. The candidates have 1 minute to respond. The exact is, how will you approach the lack of transparency on the dais? I will be putting all of this information in the chat. Ryan Valencia, you may start.
Well, thank you, and fantastic question. You know, ultimately that transparency and accountability portion is what's going to make you trust what council's doing. It's for the right intentions. And so one of the early things that I did on in my campaign was say I wasn't going to take developer money, because ultimately we need to make the right housing decisions, and you should know that it's not being influenced by any sort of developer. Additionally, you know, whether it's the thoroughness of my reports on that dais, you know, I'm going to be talking about who I'm meeting with and where it was and what we were discussing. That's incredibly important. The Planning Commission has to do it when they've been talking to developers. I think that city council members should do the same. I think additionally, I'm happy to make my public calendar available when I'm having these types of meetings in whatever way that we can, so that folks know, again, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and that way they have trust in our decisions.
Perfect, thank you. Phil?
I think it's important that we not just comply with the letter of the law where it concerns the Brown Act, but that we comply with the spirit of the law. We live by the spirit of the law, and that means, and the spirit of the law, you know, is sure that the public has input, that they know what's happening behind closed doors when they're not there, involving them as much as we possibly can, so they understand what's happening in the city. And so there's lots of ways to accomplish that. It means engaging them as many ways as we can, whether it's ensuring, of course, that the minutes are published so that people can go online and understand what's happening in the city, that we create educational videos to help them understand how the city even works in the first place, using social media to educate and engage them, creating a balanced scorecard so people know what are the goals of the city and are we making progress towards those goals. But ultimately, all of those go towards us being transparent and accountable. The two are intricately linked to one another, and we need to make sure we're addressing the transparency so that we can be held accountable as leaders.
Thank you so much. This question is for all of our candidates. How will you ensure transparency in your position? Each candidate will have 30 seconds, and we're going to start with Sofya Bagdasaryan. You're muted.
Yes. Thank you. It is so important that for us to make sure that stakeholders have ample time to respond to any proposed policy changes. I know that the school board has a website and they post the videos and minutes from each meeting, and that's one way. Abiding by the Brown Act is another, which I believe our school board has done a good job at, and that I would, like Phil said, abide by the spirit of the law as well as the letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Kameren Chase Neal.
I believe elected officials have a responsibility to not only help make important decisions about like our county's water, but also to proactively reach out to different clubs, communities, and associations for their input on important topics. I'm honored to have received endorsements from local members of our community, clubs, and unions. These groups are made up of working class citizens in our county, and it was important for me to reach out to them and hear their input on what matters most to our community with regard to water. This is how I can ensure that I'm serving and representing my entire community to the best of my abilities.
Thank you. Thomas Slosson?
Yes, every board meeting that Cayugas Municipal Water District has is open to the public. The agendas are all published 48 hours in advance per the law. And nowadays with the Zoom meetings that we have, all of our Zoom meetings are open to the public. In fact, we've had to change things so that instead of having just a public talk at the start, we have it open that if there's a vote coming up, people can talk about the thing for the vote, and then the board can rediscuss it and then have another meeting or a roll call vote on that. So we try and make sure that things are open and above board and
Thank you.
transparent.
That is 30 seconds. Josh Gray.
So I'm grateful to hear the park board is going to begin releasing recordings of their meetings. I think another aspect of transparency, though, is being out in front and engaging citizens where they're at. I've been involved in Rotary, Chamber of Commerce, Boy Scouts, and other community organizations for years, and will continue to pursue ways to engage our local residents where they're at, like at back to school nights and service organization meetings, to hear what they're facing, while also being able to promote what Rancho Simi has to offer them. Thank you.
Alex Avalos.
My answer actually reflects Josh's pretty well. I believe that so far our board has done a decent job at transparency. I believe the next step we can do is, outreach to our community. Make sure not only to have all the meetings out, but actually reach out and say, hey, we're doing this important vote. So make sure they come to our meetings to, give your response to that. And I think that's what we need to do next.
Thank you. Kate O'Brien.
Yes, we make sure we publish our agendas before the meeting and the minutes afterwards. We are going to start televising starting next week. We're going to have our first televised meeting. During COVID, we've been Zooming. We started out with phones, just doing like a phone call-in. That turned out not to work so well. We had one situation where we had in Oak Park where the phones were not working well. And so we reopened the issue that people were calling in about. It was a controversial issue in Oak Park. We figured out the mistake and corrected it by going to Zoom immediately and reopening the issue. And we will start televising as of next week.
And welcome, Elaine Freeman. The question is about transparency, and you have 30 seconds.
Yes, good afternoon. We have all of our names and contact information listed on our webpage. So if anyone in the public wishes to contact us directly, it's available to them. As Kate said, we broadcasted on Zoom. Our meetings will be televised starting this next meeting. And I'm very much out into the public, being part of the chamber and other organizations. So the public has a very good opportunity to contact me.
Thank you.
And participate in our meetings.
Thank you. Ryan Valencia.
Well, I'll always be an active participant in making sure that everything is published. Very much want to see that and make government as accessible as possible. As district director, one of the primary things I wanted to do was make sure that Simi Valley had a say in our assembly district. Sometimes it felt as though our state legislator wasn't very accessible out in Simi Valley in particular. And so active town halls, active engagement with our residents so that they know that they have a partner that they can trust.
Thank you. Phil Loos.
I love the idea that Ryan had brought up about making your calendar available to the public. Those types of things are proactive. And I think we can't just sit there and go, hey, we're available if you want to reach out to us. We need to be reaching out to them first and saying, here's where you can come meet me. And, these are the ways that you can engage with me. I think I may be the only candidate that has been holding town halls every other week throughout my entire campaign available to the public. And I think that's the type of activity we need from our council members to make sure that they are available and that people know and they can rely on they're going to be there. If I need a question, I know exactly when and where. And that's what I continue.
Joe Ayala.
There I'm going to be. There's no place for secrecy in our city hall or in the mayor. As a 10-year union leader, I have literally built my reputation on transparency. We have to let the public be informed. There are obviously the calendar is a great idea. We have to make sure we publish the minutes. Those are things that are not difficult to do. They just need someone to do them. So I would make sure that happened if I was elected to mayor.
Thank you. Robbie Hidalgo?
That's a great question. The first three on my list, community engagement, and then community engagement. The more we involve the community in the business of the city, when you look at the org chart of the city, it's the citizens at the top of the heap, not the city council, not the mayor. So it's not our availability as much as it is our purpose is to be available. With regard to the minutes, I just want to address, I don't think there was a lot of malevolence. That fall behind has been around for a long time. I would immediately advocate that we start with today's minutes and play catch up with the ones that are missing at a later time. So at least moving forward today, the next city council minutes will come out at an appropriate time.
Thank you. Brandon Fortuna, I did not forget you this time.
Thank you, appreciate it. The layperson doesn't always know about city council meetings and things of the sort, so I think we need to really focus on educating the public and how to get involved in that sense. We also need to make sure we publish the minutes, the agendas that get sent out, and that we put up those videos on YouTube. Like, honestly, that's how I've been able to keep informed with some of those things. We also need to make sure that our communication is crystal clear and open, and we get answers to things in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Clarizio?
Okay, my experience as a 53-year resident of this great city is everybody complains after it's done. Like, when was the meeting? You know, so, and then every year it's like, we're transparent and we're gonna do this and we're gonna have the minutes available. But listen, as leaders, if we wanna call ourselves leaders, we need to lead by example. We have no problem wanting to get everybody's votes out there with the biggest signs where everybody's gonna see them. But then we'll hide away little stuff, so people gotta go hunt to find stuff. So we need to set the example after the election and make this a priority, to put some effort into it, like effort. Okay, thank you.
For both mayor and city council candidates, what steps will you take to ensure accountability on the city council? You will have 45 seconds to respond. We'll start with you, Robert.
Can you repeat the question, because you never start with me.
I'm sorry, I do now.
Don't start with me.
What steps will you take to ensure accountability on the city council? You will have 45 seconds to respond, and I'll put it in the chat as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think right away we need to look at what's being done. You know, we got to be accountable. The biggest thing that the city council and the mayor does is we're supposed to be there for the people. So everybody needs to be heard, even if it's like unacceptable in some way to us, which it shouldn't be. Otherwise, we shouldn't be there. So everybody needs to get a voice. We need to make sure that everybody's heard. We need to hold everybody accountable to that they're doing that, you know, not just sitting there trying to run things their way or with their, you know, backers or whatever their own agenda. It's not our agenda. We're servants for this public. So yes, big one.
Thank you. Brandon Fortuna?
Honestly, that's a really hard question. And the answer is I don't always know. We could start with being keeping ourselves accountable. It's like, it really starts with us. And then maybe we can do something like take polls from from our constituents twice a year to see if they feel we're doing JAB adequately. And maybe we can implement some sort of 3-strike rule. If our constituents don't feel we're doing our job correctly, at least 3 times, we can start taking action of some sort. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Ayala?
Our city leaders need to make sure that need to understand that no one is above the rules and the law. Every one of us that's running for office right now has taken a responsibility upon themselves that they didn't have to do. And those people that are sitting in office are taking a responsibility on themselves that they didn't have to do. So it's incumbent upon us to remember why we're running in the first place, who we're running for, and what the purpose of this whole thing is anyway. We're running to represent the community. I'm not running to represent myself. So accountability is, there's no stronger word I could use for a public official.
Thank you. Robbie Hidalgo?
Well, in the case of the current situation, I think the most powerful tool for accountability is your vote. If you feel that there's been absence of accountability up on the dais with the current administration, November 3rd, you have an opportunity to actually assert the accountability as the citizens are at the top of the org chart. Moving forward from that, again, I go back to community engagement. When you recognize your role as a leader, as being a representative of the people, you recognize that the answers to most of the problems that we're confronting come from the people. And by empowering people, by creating committees that will help create the solutions that we're looking for, natural accountability is what occurs.
Thank you. Ryan Valencia?
Well, I think accountability and transparency are very much intertwined. So a lot of my transparency priorities are there. I think additionally, I failed to mention that I do want to hold office hours. We're given an office. We should probably use it as much as possible with our constituents that we serve. Additionally, just making sure that projects are always being highlighted in my specific district. So, you know, I have a program, What to Fix, hashtag WTF. For short, if there's issues that arise in their district that need to be fixed, whether it's a pothole or lighting, bring it up to me. I want to continue that as a council member too. So, you know, those are just a few of the things that I want to do to be accountable. And ultimately, as Robbie has said, your vote is going to judge it at the end of the day.
Thank you. Joe Ayala? Oh, I received the.
You want me to answer it again? I'll do it.
Phil Loos, hold on, go back. Phil Loos.
I lose my hair all of a sudden? No, hey,
That was me, Phil. I'm going to interrupt you right now. I'm follically challenged, and it's not fair of you to have said that.
I'm just kidding. I love you. Yeah, you know, I've said it several times on this call, and I'll say it again, but transparency and accountability go hand in hand. I've brought up many ideas I have for how we should be transparent with the public. As I mentioned, I have been all throughout my campaign, holding every other week forums. I would do, and maybe not ever hold them regularly with the public. But I also think we should have very clear behavioral standards, and you know, if they are there, we should enforce them if they're broken. Be transparent about what's expected from city leaders and about our goals. But it's all about transparency and being accountable to the public.
Thank you. This next question is for all of our candidates. In 15 seconds, Carrie Love would like to know, how do you feel one should represent themselves on social media and other public forums and networks? Do you feel that there should be guidelines in place for representation and behavior? We'll start with Ryan Valencia.
I failed to mention on the next one, active engagement with your neighborhood council now that they overlap according to the council district. So that's important. But I will say social media, incredibly important to know where the lines are, where your official side starts, where it ends, and where your campaign side starts and ends. So just setting out those very early on. I think that we're moving in a positive direction of at least having some social media guidelines within that code of conduct that was mentioned at a former meeting. So I intend to abide by those that are decided.
Thank you. Phil Loos.
You know, whether you're on social media or not, I would think the expectations would be that you be professional, that you be compassionate, that you be kind. I wouldn't have thought we needed to have specific behavioral standards for social media, because you just follow those rules and you'll be okay. But clearly we do. I'm glad that we're spelling those out, because as Ryan said, there is a difference between your personal page, your public page, and we need to be very clear about what the expectations are for our leaders.
Thank you. Sofya Bagdasaryan.
Okay. I agree with everything that's been said so far. I feel like as representatives of the community, we need to behave in a certain way. As a social worker, I abide by the National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics, and that includes, you know, professionalism. I think guidelines for such behavior are important, but there also needs to be consequences for when those behaviors aren't followed.
Thank you. Elaine Freeman.
I think being transparent is just part of the job. And I have a web page and we broadcast, and I think it's very important to spread the information about what I'm doing and what the district is doing. And I do that through various organizations, including the Chamber and the Simi Valley Community Council. And I think it's being out there among population is what we have to do and what our responsibility is.
Yep. Thank you. Again, the question is, do you feel that there should be guidelines in place for representation and behavior on social media platforms? Our next candidate is Kate O'Brien.
Well, I want to point out that we don't hand over our constitutional rights when we take the oath of office. So I'm not, it's one of the reasons I did not participate in either of the recalls. Now, having said that, I also think that, you need to keep in mind, you should not put anything on social media. You don't want to come back and haunt you. You don't want the whole world to see. Make sure brain is engaged before putting mouth in gear is always good advice. Good rule to follow.
Thank you. Alex Avalos?
Yes, I do believe we need guidelines at every level of government, just at city council. And, the job of, elected officials, especially with their social media, should be to engage and outreach with the community. And so if any official does anything that's discriminatory or racist, I believe that, we have a responsibility to show consequence and condemn them.
Thank you. Josh Gray?
Guidelines, yes. I grew up being told when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Elections empower us to address bad actors. So thank you all for following our local elections and seeing how people are not only representing themselves, but all of us in Simi Valley.
Thank you. Kameren Chase Neal?
I think at times social media can provide a very important view into the mindset of those that engage there. Sometimes for the best and other times not so much, but I do think that elected officials should always represent themselves and their elected position in a way that reflects well on everyone here in Simi and the entire community.
Thank you. Tom Slosson?
I believe that all public officials should conduct themselves professionally and ethically on all social media. If the legislature wants to enact codes of conduct or laws related to social media presence by a public official, those codes/laws should be followed.
Robbie Hidalgo?
I concur with a lot of what's been said. Functionally, this is about decorum and dignity, and that's how you comport yourself online. Service is a calling. If you are presenting two different faces on personal media than you are on your representative media, that tells the voter something. If guidelines are required, then so be it, but these seem like fairly straightforward issues.
Thank you. Joe Ayala?
As a public official, you should represent yourself honorably. There is no room for hate speech or anything that could be misconstrued or bring dishonor to your office. That's just not what you do if you're a public official.
Thank you. Robert Clarizio?
Well, yes, I think guidelines should be followed. One of the guidelines for this, anything that we're running for, is it's a non-partisan position. So absolutely, if you're representing any kind of political party on your website, you're probably breaking the rules. So this is a local election. It's nonpartisan. So yeah, definitely, we might be breaking them right now. I don't know. So thank you.
I would hope not. Brandon Fortuna?
We should always represent ourselves with the highest standards. With that being said, I do like to echo what Kate said. And what we do in our public pages is up to us. What we do with our city official websites could be grounds for guidelines. With that being said, hate speech should never be tolerated. Thank you.
Thank you. On to our next category, civilian engagement. This question is for the water board candidates. Rebecca Alberian asks, how do you plan to inform and motivate residents about water issues? You have 30 seconds to answer, and we're going to start with you first, Tom Slosson.
Well, currently, Cayugas has many social media outlets that inform the public on different things, including our conservation, planting, native planting, and even how to do irrigation. Our directors speak at high schools. I've spoken at Royal High, and our Chamber of Commerce has also spoken on. And anywhere we are invited to speak, we'll come and talk and engage whoever wants to talk to us.
Thank you. Kameren Chase?
Well, I have over 14 years experience in professional business sales and marketing. This requires me to be highly skilled at informing and exciting people about different topics, products, and ideas. I've worked with many municipalities, engineers, tract home builders across Southern California as a permit expediter, like I said. I will use this experience to encourage more civic engagement with the community serving on the Cayugas Water Board. I've learned that given the correct energy, any subject can be made exciting if you're engaging and willing to listen as much as you speak.
Thank you. This next question is from Aranasco and is also for the water board candidates. What exactly will you do to outreach with the community? You have 30 seconds, and we're going to start with you, Kameren.
Well, by building up interagency relationships with other public boards and nonprofits. I'll participate in public awareness events like fairs and festivals to provide educational opportunities on the environment, building up healthy soil, carbon capturing, and community food programs. These programs would also highlight water conservation, fighting climate change, and the impacts of drought. If you visit our neighboring water boards' websites, you'll find entire pages dedicated to their community outreach. And I'd like to see Callegues with one as well.
Thank you. Tom Slosson?
Callegues again has all the websites for the social media, and also one of the groups I belong to, AWA, sponsors college-age students interested in water issues to attend an all-day symposium and network with water agency professionals with the potential goal of attaining employment in the water industry. I continue to support this initiative to engage more interest in pressing issues facing the water district. Also, as part of the Ventura County Special Districts Association, we have meetings to let everybody know what's going on with the special districts. And again, anybody's invited to engage in those.
Thank you so much. This is a 15-second question for all candidates. And since we are running low on time, please keep it to 15 seconds. Catherine Plyer asks, how will you excite and engage our youth in local politics? We're going to start with Sofya Bagdasaryan.
Thank you. I really admire what Mr. Dunnard and his colleagues did at Royal High School with the Brown Bag Lunch Series that I participated in, where students had the opportunity to do a Q&A. I think those types of events, along with similar ones for current elected officials, would be wonderful. In this age of Zoom, I think one plus side is that interacting with constituents has become much easier. So social media is critical for youth engagement. And
okay, so
Yeah, so I have had so many opportunities throughout this campaign to engage with the youth, and that's because I think I talk about the issues they care about. It's not that complicated. But I also have reached out to YSAC at Santa Susana High School, the Brown Bag Lunches at Royal High. We can engage the youth council, but I think it's just finding them where they are, talking about the issues they care about, and not talking down to them because their opinion is important. So thank you.
Ryan Valencia?
Well, I hope I can excite them by getting elected as the youngest council member in our city's history, first and foremost, that anyone can do it. You know, even though I do have one of the longest resumes of service of folks running at the same exact time. And also, I just hope to build those partnerships with Youth Council and return to my former chamber there, as well as Youth in Government and a number of these state-oriented organizations.
Thank you. Brandon Fortuna?
Politics and voting become slightly performative if we're not willing to put to action. So I would like to empower the youth and people in general to just get involved in their communities as a whole. Like Phil said, finding out where they're at and getting engaged in that way, it's one of the best ways to go. And in this is of time, I'll see the rest of my time.
Thank you. Joe Ayala?
Actually, I spend a lot of time every year in November, or I forget what month it is, but every year I go to my daughter's school and I have it's like Bring Your Dad to School Day, and it's like professional dress day or whatever. So I always engage the youth in at the elementary school level and at the high school level. That's just what I do when I'm not running. But when you're running for office, you should do that more often.
Thank you. Robbie Hidalgo?
Yes, I've actually just been so honored to work with the Youth Council. I think they've run a couple of projects for us as nonprofits. Their push through the school leadership, I think, activates a much broader community with awareness for civic engagement.
Thank you. Robert Clarizio?
Yes, as working as a youth counselor from the age of high school up through college at a wrestling camp, I was always the most popular one because you know what I did? I asked the kids. So we definitely got to get the kids involved and ask them what they want. And then we'll support them.
Thank you. Alex Avalos?
So I think I can speak from experience here, being the youngest, candidate running. What we really need to do is just get them something to vote for. And when I'm in office, I tend to do that much the same and get them elected in local politics.
Thank you. Elaine Freeman?
Yes, I'm sorry. I think my mute was off last time when I answered your question. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
I participate in the Youth Council, other communities, Simi Valley Community Council, Spread the Word, Chamber of Commerce, and Rotary. I'm past president of the Rotary in the Morning Club. and I'm very active in the community, and I reach out to people all the time. I think that's the important part.
Thank you.
Asking questions and getting the information out.
Kate O'Brien?
Yes, we have hundreds of youth, young people who are volunteering for our park district already, and I think continuing to encourage that gets them involved in the community, which in turn is a pathway toward politics. We also engage in social media, and we'll continue to do that, and take part in the youth council every year. Interact with them, also taking part in the brown bag lunches that Mr. Dennard has been hosting.
We need to move on to the next candidate. Our next candidate is Josh Gray.
Speaking in front of classrooms of all ages is honestly some of the most fun you can have. And you just have to demystify politics by engaging them in real issues. It's how well classrooms are funded, cleanliness of our parks, and supporting youth programs in our community.
Thank you. Thomas Slosson?
Yeah, I have spoken in high school, again, the brown bag lunch program on the campus, and look forward to continuing this practice in the future. And I always encourage our youth to attend local public meetings and participate in political discussion. Hands-on experience can be very rewarding for them.
Thank you. Kameren Chase Neal?
Well, Phil kind of hit it on the head. To engage young voters in the political process at all levels, we need to reach them in the places that they interact. I'd like to create an internship program where we could invite young adults from the local high schools and colleges to help run our Calleguas social media accounts like Twitter and Instagram, and making sure that we're engaging them where they already are.
Thank you. This is our final question for the entire night. Thank you guys for everyone, the people who participated, the people who just came to watch the candidates speak. This last question is, what is the best thing and the worst thing about Simi, and how will you create positive change? You will each have 30 seconds to answer the question, and then another 15 seconds for closing statements, which means each candidate will have a total of 45 seconds per person. We're going to start with Phil Loos.
Well, I love this city. It's been so good to me, to my family, and I just want that for everyone. I personally, my favorite thing is the natural beauty that's around us. So that's why I love our park board candidates and love talking to them. You know, and I want to do all we can to preserve it, which means preserving our open spaces and preventing wildfires, addressing climate change. I think the thing we need to address most is the economic piece of the city. Everything stems from that, whether we can generate revenues and make this an economic hub that can sustain us into the future. And that requires a complete change in direction of how we approach housing and development.
Thank you. Ryan Valencia?
Well, definitely the good, and the reason why my parents moved here to raise me here is it feels like your hometown. It is that feel to it. It makes Simi Valley such a special place to grow up. The safe streets, the green hillsides, the mom and pop feel to it, and that's why I came back after I left for 4 years for college. I ultimately came back to better this community and live here for the rest of my life. And you know, in terms of the bad, I think sometimes we have some hesitation towards change. We're not trying to change the character of this community. We're trying to sustain our community for future generations to come, to have that same promise of why my parents moved here. So that's what I would say, that sometimes we misconstrue what change means.
Thank you. Tom Slosson?
In my opinion, the best thing about Simi Valley is its, again, small town feel where neighbors kind of know each other and also know many of the current business owners, and also, again, the beauty of natural resources around us. The geographic location, in a way, can be one of the worst things, especially with the Santa Ana winds, can be a disastrous component in a fire season. One positive change would be to have better management of our neighboring wilderness chaparral areas to mitigate the extreme fire danger.
Thank you. Kameren Chase Neal?
Well, I think me and Tom agree a bit here on this one, but we definitely have a relatively large population, but we still have our compassionate small town feel. And we are a resilient community that, when united, are a force to be reckoned with. However, discourse in our city is more polarized now than I can recall in my 30+ years living in Simi. And as a Simi Valley native with a unique perspective, I'll work together with everyone in our community from all walks of life to encourage unity and togetherness to address our common challenges. You know, I decided to run for local office because I want to have a chance to give back to the community that's given so much to me. I'd like to thank Aaliyah for bringing so many great candidates together, and thank my opponent for his service in office. When you get your ballot in the coming weeks, I hope you'll consider supporting Kameren Chase Neal for Calleguas Municipal Water District Division 1. And please remember, vote Cam and stay cool.
I was muted. Thank you. Sofya Bagdasaryan.
Thank you. We have a beautiful city in many regards, but the best thing about this city that I've found is the kindness between neighbors that I have witnessed. People have come to each other's aid in times of need. The worst that I have seen has been regard to the polarization and racism that I have witnessed and I've had people tell me about. It's important for everybody to understand that in this country, minority groups are not treated very well by various public institutions, and research shows that. In terms of positive change with this regard, what I've been doing is I've been leading a community-based group working with our chief of police and other city leaders towards reforms that are mutually agreed upon. In terms of the school board, I think our curriculum needs to include the voices of color that are currently missing. Thank you so much, Aaliyah, and everyone for this opportunity to share my thoughts and ideas for the school district. If elected, I will do everything in my power to make sure that all our children are receiving the high-quality education they deserve and that parents, teachers, and staff have the supports that they need for student success. Thank you.
Thank you. O'Brien?
Well, the best thing about Simi Valley, I'm echoing what other people are saying, is that small town feel where people care about each other. And people that have visited me here have said the same thing, say, wow, it's a big city, but it feels like a small town, and it really does. Even when we've had polarization like we've had this year that I've never seen before, even then, like, we had that protest a couple of months ago, not one arrest. I want to see that continue. I want us to put our differences aside and work together, continue to make Simi Valley a great place to live. The natural beauty is gorgeous. I love hiking around and looking back down on the city, and a clear day in particular, early spring, just gorgeous.
Thank you. Our next candidate.
Least favorite things would have to be the heat, the wildfires.
Yeah. Thank you. Josh,
am I over my time?
Yes. Sorry.
Simi Valley has great people who live here and they want to help. I love it. There's a reason I came back. I think more folks could be engaged in our programs, our projects, our events that are put on in Simi. Greater rec programs and building up local events and activities can better connect us to each other and increase participation so that we can build that positive change we do want to see in Simi, and we can build better. I want to bring you to our parks, our trails, our rec programs, and all that our community has to offer. We should be protecting open spaces, expanding access to our after-school programs, and grow our rec center programs. Thank you all for your time. I'd love to earn your vote come November. Josh Gray for Park Board. Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate is Alex Avalos.
Well, I think the best part about Simi Valley is partly what Phil said, is its nature. That's partly one reason why I decided to run for Park Board in the first place. I love that, someone who loves the outdoors, that loves biking and hiking, that I'm just 10 minutes away from all these great trails. And I do think the worst part is part of its leadership at multiple levels, where I feel like they're very inactive in invoking change and, addressing the dynamic needs of our community. So that's why when I run, my positive change will be letting people in, like everyone in. So that way we can, be a closer community, and that way we can all feel part of this instead of being divisive.
Thank you. Elaine Freeman?
Yes, I think the best part of the community, and I've been here for a very long time, is the groups that work together for positive change. And I've seen that with various groups of all ethnic and interests. And I think that we have the capabilities to even make Simi a better place. And I'm very proud of all the open space. Just since I've been on the board, we now have 6,000 acres plus of open space and trail. And we have committees that review it. It's a very inclusive, and we try to provide recreation for all. And I think the one challenge we have is the Simi Mall, just how to make that beneficial for everybody. We have a balanced budget, we have reserves, no debt, and the district is well run, and I would say that is my best recommendation for re-electing me to the
Thank
board.
you. Thank you. Our next candidate is Robbie Hidalgo.
Thanks so much, Lee, and thanks for putting all this together. This is an awful lot to juggle, and you did a great job. You know, I think I'll echo everybody's sentiments when I say Simi Valley is honestly the hidden gem of Southern California. I work in Los Angeles often. This is a great secret. Small town, incredible feel, great community, unbelievable environment, our location, the beaches, etc. Where would you want to live in Southern California other than Simi? Conversely, I think the biggest problem right now in Simi Valley is the polarization and the factionalization, and a great deal of ideological demagoguery up on the dais. We have bought into this tribalism, and it's pushed down, I understand, from the national level, and people are grasping onto that. But some of these solutions that we're looking for are becoming politicized, and that, I think, is something we have to fight against. I have a history of writing policy, authoring policy, and advocating for policy, and working across the aisle, and that's why I'm running for mayor. We're going to have to do that.
Thank you so much. Brendan Fortuna.
First of all, I forgot to mention that climate change is very real, and I believe that. Second of all, one of my favorite things is how quiet Simi feels sometimes. I love that. I love all our hiking trails, and I especially love our mom and pop shops. I love that. Some things that I dislike are polarization and the spitefulness that we sometimes feel. We need to do something to change about that. Whether you vote for me, vote for someone else, don't vote at all. Get involved directly with the community. We're all part of the community. We're all members here. We all should got to take care of each other and get involved directly. And that's the one thing that I will leave you with. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Clarizio.
The absolute best thing about Simi Valley is the people. I mean, look at you guys. You're all wonderful. I love each and every one of you as I'm getting to know you. I love everybody I come in contact with. My family will tell you that they have to drag me out of places because I probably talk to you and you don't recognize me out there because I just can't get enough of the people. We're extraordinary here. And, you know, I just like to say that probably the worst thing right now is being in the spotlight and seeing a couple of things that we could do, the wonderful people of Simi Valley can set the bar for the other cities to follow. And I believe that we can do that because of the people. We're not going to run away or go and settle for just okay.
Thank you.
So okay, thank you. Is that it?
Thank you. And then our last candidate for the evening is Joe Ayala.
Thank you, Aaliyah, for putting this event together and for all of the advocacy that you do in the city. The thing that brought me to Simi Valley, I don't think I said this earlier, but I'm from Texas originally, and there was something about the city. Maybe it was the Rocky Peaks or something about the city geographically attracted me. And when we were looking for a safe place for our family, and a place that had a good school district, this town was something that really stood out. The worst thing about Simi, and you know, we talked about polarization, but I really think that what's happened is in the last few years is that some people have decided that it's okay to say whatever the hell they want to, whenever they want to say it to anybody that they want to say it to. That can't be allowed to exist in the city. Everyone has the First Amendment right to speak, but you can't be doing hate speech around here and starting to scare people of color and running people or saying that these people don't count, they're not part of the city. I'm a person of color, I'm a multicultural person, and I think that we need to represent everyone, not just one segment of the population. I'm Joe Ayala. If you want more information about me, you can go to my website, joeayala.org.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you. I just want to thank you guys so much for all of the candidates who came to attend today. I'm sorry that I dragged you an extra 15 minutes over and that we had so many technical difficulty issues and that, you know, I might have forgot a few of you guys like once or twice, you know, but sorry about that. But thank you guys so much for attending and for your dedication to civic engagement and for your care and empathy for Simi Valley. I want to thank you for trying to make Simi Valley a better place, regardless of whatever vision you have of that. So I just want to remind everyone that your mail-in ballots should be coming in October 5th. I have also dropped the link to, for the audience members, I have also dropped a link to every single candidate that has attended here today. That way you can learn more about their campaigns and maybe reach out, ask if you can volunteer. maybe donate, or maybe just talk to them more about your policy ideas and explain, hey, look, this is what I want to see happen in Simi Valley, very much like the 150 questions I received here today. So I just want to thank you guys. Thank you so much to everyone who came here today. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Aaliyah. Fantastic. Everything was
Thank
just
you, Aaliyah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice
Good
catch.
night, everyone.
It's going to be on TV. I'm just kidding.
It better be.
definitely
Yeah,
one of the
this is
best.
my good side. This is not my good side.
Good night, everyone. Leaving.
Everybody.
Good night. Good to see everyone.
Thank you guys.